Hello and welcome to your Access Point to Washington. I'm Aisha Tanzim. Whatever Pakistan's problems are, the people who suffer the most are the youth, both because they're now a majority of Pakistan's population and also because they have their whole lives ahead of them. Can Pakistan's youth save their future? Joining me to discuss this in the Washington studios are Michael Kugelman of the Woodrow Wilson Center, who works extensively with social media involvement in Pakistani youth, and Mehtab Karim, a professor of public policy at George Mason University. He's doing research on the attitudes, aspirations, and entrepreneurial potentials among the youth in Pakistan. And we are joined in our New York studios by a Pakistani youth activist, Mohammad Shehzad Khan, who recently received an award from Friends of UNFPA for his contributions to the health and dignity of women. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. And it seems like we have an all-male show except me in the show today, but we don't mind. I will start actually with Shehzad in New York. Shehzad, as we open this program, there's a girl in critical condition in a Pakistani hospital. Her only crime was that she wanted to go to school. She wanted all girls to go to school. You work on similar issues and you work in similar environments. How big of an issue security really is in Pakistan?
Actually, first of all, thank you very much, Aisha. It's very sad that the whole world today is celebrating the first ever UN International Day of Girl Child, and our very own girl, like 14 years old Malala Yousafzai, she's struggling to get her consciousness back in Pakistan. It is very hard indeed because, you know, the environment, and particularly this is the first time that male like the young activists are being targeted, and just their crime is that they are promoting the education. I'm really worried that what sort of things that these extremists want to promote, because getting education is compulsory as per the hadith of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, for every man and women, and this is exactly what she tried to follow, and this is what exactly other young people and people in Pakistan generally are trying to promote.
But Shehzad, what I want you to answer is this a one-time incident or is it an ongoing issue? You work on the ground through your Chanan Development Association, which I must mention has nobody over 27, as you told me. Is this an ongoing issue?
Yes, this is an ongoing issue, and sometimes the young people we are working in Pakistan, and including ourselves, we have been threatened by some of the extremist group because we are trying to promote women empowerment and young girls particularly. We are trying to promote education amongst them. We are trying to promote them like a healthy life for them. But yes, we have been threatened, and this is an ongoing issue. But this is, it's the very first time that this issue has been brought up by the media, particularly after this incident. That now the young people are in Pakistan, instead of being threatened and like stop doing what they were doing, now we can see that all over the Pakistan, the young people are on streets. They are protesting against what happened to Malala Yousafzai, and now we are very optimistic that this is the point. We will continue working and striving for education, for peace in Pakistan, and nobody can stop us.
Thank you very much, Shehzad. Now, there's a perception, rightly or wrongly, that in Pakistan, the government is not willing to do anything. It doesn't want to do anything, and the politicians are only there to make money. Now, I'm not going to argue on that, but it's a very hopeless situation for a young person growing up. So, Mike, I'll start with you. What do the youth in Pakistan do? Do they sit back with their head in their hands and just, mourn over it, or can they do something?
Well, I mean, you're talking about a country with 180 million people, of which 2/3 of them are under the age of 30. So it's hard to answer that question using broad and brush strokes. But sure, I mean, youth are mobilizing in ways they hadn't been in the last few years, and I think a major reason for that is the growth of social media. It's provided a tool to young people who in Pakistan tend to be quite internet savvy, particularly in urban areas. It's given them a tool to get the word out about things. It's given them a tool to spread the word about protests, rallies, things like that. It's, we have to look at this in a very micro fashion. I'm not saying that there's going to be some sort of broad-based social movement of Pakistani youth. It's not going to happen for a variety of reasons. But I will say that we've come a long way from the days of bans on student unions and things like that. Things are starting to change for the better, I think.
So, Mr. Mehtab, you have done research on what the Pakistani youth are capable of doing. What I want to know is, it's easy to say, well, the youth can mobilize their social media, but to mobilize, you need awareness. And to be aware, you need education. When we don't have education at the ground level, is it too much to expect the youth to even know what they should be asking for?
Well, I mean, yes, I think education is the key. Being an educator myself, I can appreciate that. But one thing which is becoming very clear that the youth of today, as compared to say my generation, is not only more educated, but is much more aware. And that awareness comes through, as Michael already mentioned, that social media, internet savvy. This survey which I did do in Karachi City, about half of the young people, irrespective of what class they are coming from, they have access to internet. About 95% have mobile phones, and about half of the mobile phones are connected to internet. So that's the kind of news they are getting. That's making them more active. Besides, one very interesting thing, if you look at the recent demography of Pakistan, especially related to education, there are more girls who are going to colleges and universities. And in most of the universities in Pakistan and colleges where they have co-education, they are more females than males. And besides, there are girls' colleges and girls' universities or female university. So they are, I would say that educated women or those coming from, and some of them, I was recently there, I spent a semester at Quaid-e-Azam University, and I was really very interested in seeing that the makeup of the students there, at all the public sector university, is really lower middle class and at times lower class. You won't be surprised that, I know in my time when I was studying at Karachi, I won't find anyone who is coming from a poor family. But there are many, many students who are coming from rural areas. They're coming from labor class background, and they're getting educated, and that also includes women. So I think...
Okay, let me bring in Shehzad here, who himself is a young activist, and he went on his first hunger strike, I need to let you know, you guys know, when he was 12 years old, to save his sister from, a 15-year-old sister, from being married to a 50-year-old landlord. So his situation, your situation, Shehzad, is very similar to Malala, who started writing a blog for the BBC Urdu when she was hardly 11 or 12 years old, and now she's only 14 and a full-fledged activist for girls' education. Tell me, when you travel around Pakistan, do you see that young people are aware? Do they know what they need, what they should ask for, and what they deserve?
Actually, this is very interesting because as Michael also mentioned that there are 104 million young people in Pakistan out of 180 million population. And I used to travel a lot throughout Pakistan, and not only to the 4 provinces, but also to Gilgit-Baltistan region and also Azad Kashmir. And the young people in all of these areas, all the provinces, they are very much aware of what is going on. They are very much active as well and proactive sometimes to bring their issues on board. And interestingly, there's also acceptability amongst the adults of the society, particularly in the development sector and the government and media as well. They are ready to listen to young people, and that provides young people an opportunity to raise voices about their issues, whether it's about education, it's about peace, it's about like their profession or their employability. All these issues, young people are very aware. And the only thing that is that is missing is the platforms, is the guidance. They have the great potential, and I would rather say that the young people in Pakistan particularly have greatest potential as compared to the whole world, but they are being exploited because they don't have opportunities to be for their potential to be utilized in a positive way. That is why they are being capped many times by the extremists to be used in suicidal attacks sometimes, like from 2008 to 2009 and 2010. Majority of the suicidal attacks were being done by the young people. And
so what you're suggesting, and I'll bring Michael in this discussion, is that if these young people are tapped for a positive change, but Michael, that's what we started with an assumption, and it's a wide assumption that we are not here to argue, that the government's not doing enough. That's why these people are being tapped. What can be done for the young people without even counting on the government to play the biggest role? Can anything be done like that?
Well, we're going to have to look at non-government roles, just because the Youth Ministry of Pakistan has effectively been abolished because it was devolved through the 18th Amendment. It doesn't really exist anymore, and there's really no alternative yet. I mean, the Planning Commission has come out with some good ideas for youth policy, but it's not an implementing body. It just provides advice to the government. So I think that the solution, we really do have to look at bottom-up approaches, so to speak. Top-down approaches to empowering youth really are not an option. And there are initiatives. There have been things done, but it's definitely a long road ahead. But I just don't see how we can assume that the government, which is more seized of the problem than it used to be, I don't see how we can look to the government to make the first move here. It just I don't see that.
Do you agree?
Well, I would agree pretty much what Michael said, but I'd like to add one thing. That Pakistan is in a situation where government is not taking care of anything.
Right.
They're not taking care of education system, the health system, you know what?
There's an energy crisis.
You know, and so, but the unfortunate thing is that, you know, you want security, people hire their own security, want no electricity, they can go for their own generators. But here, it's very crucial that if you leave the youth on their own, of course, family takes care of some of them or most of them, but many of them where families are unable to take care of them, they are the ones who are probably to getting, you know, into areas which are not liked by the society.
Okay, so here's a simple question. I'm a young man or woman in Pakistan. I'm growing up. I want to get education. I want to be involved. What do I do? And I'll ask all three of you, starting with you.
Well, I'll just give you a reference to a conference which I was co-organizing yesterday at U.S. Institute of Peace, that how youth in Pakistan could be helped by a non-governmental sector. And there are some very good presentations. And one area in which I'm working is promoting entrepreneurship. Everybody wants a job, but there are not enough jobs available anywhere in the world, even in the US. So what one does do? Okay, you go and look for private sector jobs because there's no. If there are not enough private sector jobs, what do? You create jobs for yourself. And there are enough talents available among young people, that all of us know, that they just need some guidance. And what is missing here, what I see that, okay, government is promoting establishing universities and colleges, but there is no technical education center where youth, young men and women can go and get training, and they can be basically convinced that, okay, after getting this, you don't need to find a job. You become entrepreneurs. And there are enough organizations, there are private sector organizations, even government sector has Benazir income support program, which is just doling out money to people. That's not the way to distribute money. If you do that,
but doesn't that also promise jobs to the oldest child in the family? The Benazir program.
You see, but that's a different story. What I'm saying that they are giving whatever money, 1,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees or whatever they are giving in a year. You know, that money could be used to convince them to do something out of it. One can start a small shop, for example.
Okay, and so here's my question that, Mike, I want you to address. I was listening to the chairman of the Planning Commission of Pakistan at some event, and the issue was not that Pakistan needs soft power. They're universities, but they're not good teachers. There are not enough teachers to even fill the universities, and he's talking about a technical institute. So what do youth do in that regard? Is there anything that can be started bottoms up that doesn't need help from top down?
Well, yeah, that's a question that we all need to deal with. Let me just preface my response with something I think gets to the crux of the problem here. About 2 years ago, there was an NGO in Pakistan, Bargad, which I'm sure we all know. It does work on youth issues. It had a contest in which it asked young people to say what would be the ideal youth policy in Pakistan to get young people empowered, mobilized, etc. And the winning entry, which I thought was so ironic, was for an idea to send 100,000 top young Pakistanis out of the country every year to go to aging Western countries that need labor. How ironic is that? You know, and how it's tough not to be cynical when you hear that. And you know, let's face it. In polls of youth, I'm sure Dr. Karim could attest to this as well. Many of them say that they would want to leave the country if they could. Now, that does not represent a majority for sure. There are many of very patriotic youth in Pakistan who are trying to improve their situation at home. But it's a very steep road.
You'd be surprised how many comments we get on our Facebook page, messages just asking for help and trying to get out, because not because they don't like the country, but because they have no option. But Shehzad, you created an option for yourself. You started Chanan Development Association. Tell me how you did it.
Actually, before going to that, I just wanted to comment on one thing that Michael said, that yes, after 18th constitutional amendment, the youth ministry has been devolved, but indeed it's a great opportunity, because now the provincial governments, they are establishing the provincial youth policies, and in June 2012, the first ever Punjab youth policy was launched with the help of UNFPA, and of course Bargad was involved in that, and other young people were given the opportunity you know, to share that what they wanted in their own youth policy. And but ironically, our Chief Minister of Punjab, he is spending like 8 billion rupees on just a youth and sports festival. And there are so many other things that can be done in this huge amount of money. This is something that the governments needs to prioritize, that what of the youth development initiatives they would want to invest, rather than just spending on the sports activities and youth festivals. And now coming back to you, when we established the Chanan Development Association in 2006, it was very difficult for us, you know, to being recognized even amongst the civil society, and government is like was too far at that time, because we were asked that you are too young, you know, you can be the volunteers, you can be the interns, but you cannot be the equal partners in development. We struggled hard. We got first amount of money was just 5,000 rupees, and we engaged around 1,000 young people in these 5,000 rupees. And when we submitted the report, then the donor and they just you know, start connecting us with others. And now I can say it's just 5 years. Now all the meetings and consultations that are happening within development sector, within UN, and even the government sector, they are you know, at least having the representatives of young people. So now there is a big acceptability, particularly when the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf was getting you know, popularity among people, and then you know, then everyone, all the governments, all the political parties, they have young people at the top priority of their manifestos. Some are distributing, you know, the laptops amongst them, and some are starting the Benz income support program.
Are the young people energized to go vote, Shehzad? Because that's one thing that's going to get attention.
Yeah, of course. I believe that this general elections will be very different, you know, because there will be more young people going out and casting the vote. But my only concern is that all these political parties which have the young people right at the top of their priority in the manifesto, will they be considering these young people and their issues after the elections? Whatever party is going to formulate the government or the coalition government, whether they are going to give attention to the young people and their issues or not. And also we do not have any national peace policy in Pakistan. There is no consensus among the political parties that how to build peace in general in Pakistan, and particularly in Balochistan, in other areas. So young people, they are very positive, but if you have all the negative energies around you, you cannot be positive longer. So we need to, you know, to do something to continue positive energies around them, so that they can, you know, continue
doing the good work.
Country.
And Shehzad, you bring our attention to a very good point, which is it's young people's issues are not different from everybody else's issues. Security is their issue too, and peace is their issue, and lack of healthcare is their issue, and lack of energy and electricity is their issue. Let's go to a couple of Facebook comments that we've received. Let's see if we can put up a Facebook comment on screen. I think we have a comment from Arshad Ali on our Facebook page, who says that student unions have been banned since 1984 by the military dictator General Ziaul Haq. Pakistani youth has no way to participate in national politics and the democratic process. It's necessary that they be given the right to formulate student unions. Shehzad just said that the political parties have put youth at the top of their manifesto thanks to PTI, but would it really help if they actually form student unions?
Well, I have been even a faculty member in Pakistan. The student union, I don't think it's a good idea to ban anything for that matter. But the student union, the way it was behaving, or it has been behaving, you know, over the, during the 70s and 80s, most of the elements were coming in there. They are being supported by the political parties. They were promoting their platforms, and that's where, at least in Karachi and Lahore, I'm aware of, that's where the ethnic strife and, you know, sectarian clashes started.
And a lot of violence, I remember.
Each group would make their own political party, and then they'll fight with each other.
They'll fight with each other.
Guns, battles, and what have you. So I don't know how to, but I don't think that, you see, one thing which is very important, and this gentleman, I should appreciate that only 10% of Pakistani youth ages 17 to 23, which is college-going age, is going to colleges. They're enrolled there. So you're not talking about 90% of youth in Pakistan. You see, that they don't go to colleges. You see, and I think the best way is to reach out to the people, or to the young men and women who are out of college. I mean, those who go to colleges and universities, they're privileged people.
Right.
Only 10% of the population of the youngest, that age cohort. So, well, that's a good idea, but to you know, start the unions again. But I think...
How do you reach the 90% is what you're saying?
And I was there in Pakistan, and I know that they have developed a policy on youth in Punjab, and they're doing it in Sindh also. I had quite a bit of discussion with the policymakers. And what they're aiming at, again, those people who are better off, they are not the ones who are creating problems. The people who need help is the lower middle class, is the lower class, areas which are, you know, what we call Kachi Abadi, the squatter settlements. That's where, and I don't know if NGOs are working there or not, because most of the, even youth NGOs I'm aware of, as a matter of fact, I was president of one of the youth NGOs, Youth Catalyst in Islamabad, and I helped forming it. And whom do we have? We have people who are educated.
Who are privileged. Okay, so Michael, you've worked a lot with social media. Do we have some of that 90% active on social media, or even that is something that's left for the privileged class?
Well, definitely not 90%. I mean, if you look at figures of those that use social media in Pakistan, it's several million. We're talking about 6-7 million on Facebook, 2 million on Twitter. And those that are internet connected, it's significantly more, about 19-20 million, which is great, but that's nowhere close to everyone. But it's definitely an improvement, and it's a larger number than those that are in universities, as Dr. Karim said.
Yeah, but Mike, there is another point here. Talking to a demographer, about 55 million young men and women are there who are between ages 15 to 29.
Right.
That's 30% of Pakistan's population. So if you have 7 million on Facebooks, there are also people like me who no way I'm a youth. So what I'm saying, yeah, okay, so there are perhaps 1 million or a couple of million or maybe 3 million.
Even if we put
younger.
their figure at 3 or 4 million,
Right.
it's still very low. Shehzad, how do we reach out to those people who are not in colleges, who are not on Facebook, who are not on Twitter, and maybe the kind of people that you reach out to?
Actually, the important thing to reach out to those who are not, even at schools, like college is a big thing. There are a lot of organizations that are using very innovative ideas, and also from Youth Peer Education Network, they are using like interactive theater and also doing, you know, peer education, because when a peer is educated, then the peers amongst themselves, they have a big influence on them. So they, you know, start reaching to them about and raising awareness amongst them. And another thing that the government should do to reach out to almost 100% is the you know, the devolution. The local government system was something that this is a very good initiative by the General Pervez Musharraf. I should appreciate that, that provides an opportunity to the younger generation of a very local community, you know, to come and take part in the politics, and at least to serve and start serving, you know, at a local at the union council level. And then therefrom you get an experience, you build your leadership, and that's how we can get more leadership coming from the grassroots. Mustafa Kamal is one of the example, and who's like just started from Karachi, and now he's a senator. So this is a way, you know, if there's no local government system, then unfortunately I don't know why the governments are not conducting elections at the local, for the local government.
Okay, Shehzad, but here's one thing I want to ask you. Are there areas in Pakistan that are still no-go even for NGOs, where people don't reach out to people?
Yeah, there are definitely areas. It's very unfortunate, but there are definitely areas, particularly in FATA region. It's very hard to reach, and even in some of the areas in Balochistan and interior part of Punjab and Sindh, there are some areas which is very hard to reach, even by the organizations. But again, if we are like it's development sector organizations, NGOs or government, if we are not engaging the tribal leaders into our discussions, if we are not engaging, you know, the elders of the society, of the communities, so we will not be able to make impact on the young people. We really now we really now need to focus on building partnerships between young people and adults at the grassroots level, in the development sector, at the UN and in the government sector, so that the young people can at least share their issues with the adults of their same community, and adults are also, you know, open enough to listen to them and also to act on them. So and if there is no collaboration between youth and adults,
yes,
then
and
there will be less impact.
And Shehzad, you talk about sharing their problems and issues. One issue that somebody shared on our Facebook page, Muskan Chaudhary says, and the question was, how do the youth make changes? And Muskan Chaudhary said, by positivity, education and unity among people. The main problem in Pakistan is the double standard in education. So we've talked a lot about education, but just education is not the issue. There are standards in education. We have English medium, we have Urdu medium, and
there's a madrasa system, and also like there are 4 different kinds of education that young people are getting. So how do you expect them to deliver the same?
Exactly, exactly. So now we've come full circle. We need partnerships between young people and older people. One thing that we didn't have time to get to, but I want to quickly get to it, is how do NGOs that are sitting outside the country, that are not part of the political system, help? Because this whole discussion is trying to avoid going through the bureaucracy and the political system.
Yeah, well, I think you had raised this question, and I think perhaps Shehzad should know better than I do. Because I have done some studies of NGOs. First of all, most of the NGOs, they don't reach out to the people who are living in the rural areas. About 60% of Pakistan's population lives there. And so they are mainly urban-based. And urban-based, and within urban-based, they don't reach everybody, as you all of us know. So they have to reach out. That's one issue. The second important thing, which again we have talked about, that reliance on government. They will make the policy, but what happens to the policy? They
rely. Okay, let me quickly, because we're coming towards the end. Shehzad, very quickly tell me, you have managed to partner with international NGOs. What is a successful way of doing that? And just tell us briefly in 30 seconds.
The only thing that you enable the young people to, you know, to deal with to partner with international organization and UN is to focus on their own organizational strengths as well. You know, we have to be very professional when we are writing proposals, when we are taking proposals. So we have to show the world that the young people are professionals and they should be treated as equal partners in development. And I would rather say that it is also the responsibility of the governments, you know, to make the policies and to ensure the executions. The non-government sector and the youth organization, we can just advocate. But if it is not institutionalized, then the impact is very low. We can only reach
thank you,
very
Shehzad. Thank you.
People.
It's an important topic, and we'll probably come back to it, but that's all the time we have for today. Before we leave, I want to thank our guests, Michael Kugelman of Woodrow Wilson, Mehtab Karim of George Mason, and Mohammad Shehzad Khan of Chanan Development Association, who recently received an award by no other than Ban Ki-moon. I want you to remind you not to forget that you can watch this show again on our website, on our Facebook page. Leave your comments, tell your friends, tell us what other topics you want us to talk about. Also on our webpage, www.urduvoa.com, there are stories, there are analysis pieces, there are updates, there are news. Check it out. Thank you for joining us on Access Point. Goodbye and good night.